allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Are there any announcements from the committee tonight? Give Tom just a second. Hearing none. All right. We are skipping public comment until the end. And let's dive right in. With us tonight, we have the DPW director and the facilities. So let's, if you'd like. Do you have a microphone? Oh, you do. Okay.
I do. Can you hear me okay?
We can. It's going to go through everybody else. They'll be able to hear you as well.
All right.
So I have your presentation. I'm happy to share it or to put it up if you'd like, and just let me know when you want me to share around or switch slides if that would be workable for you.
Okay.
All right. Oops. Whenever you're ready.
All right. So the Department of Public Works is the combined resources of the Highway, Cemetery, Sewer, and Vehicle Maintenance Divisions. We repair and maintain roads, bridges, sewer infrastructure, and provide essential services to the welfare and acceptable quality of life to the citizens of Lunenburg. What we don't have anymore is the Facilities and Parks Divisions. They were removed in July of last year, not this year, with the creation of the new Facilities Department with its own director. So this year's budget will look a little different than previous years. So move to the next slide. I threw in an organizational chart so we could see what the department looks like. So we have, under the director, we have an assistant, we have the highway, we have a superintendent, and we have 4 heavy equipment operators, where we have 1 vacancy there. We hope to fill that soon. We have interviews tomorrow, actually. We have our mechanic, and we have our cemetery division, and with the superintendent and 2 seasonal helpers. And then we have the sewer department with a business manager, an assistant business manager, and we have a clerk who participates in the senior tax write-off program. Next slide. So I took a look at the past 3 years. I looked at fiscal year 20 also. That one's a little bit skewed, COVID year. So when I took the average of the actual spending in FY21, FY22, and then the budgeted number from FY23. So I took averages, and you'll see that in further slides. And that's how I came up with my request for each line item. So I broke it down into major categories: the general highway, the highway labor, snow removal, traffic signs and devices, vehicle maintenance, and cemetery and tree removal. So on this slide, you can see from last year to this year, it's an increase of almost just over $158,000. So there's further explanations as we go along. So the next slide. So I put in this pie chart. I put a lot of pie charts just so you can visually see where the money's going a little easier. Most of it goes to general highway and labor and snow. All right, we go to the next slide. Wanted to talk about programs and performance measures a little bit. So on the highway side, on the tree removal, our goal is to safely and timely and efficiently remove hazardous trees. There was a report done a number of years back. There's thousands of trees on the roadside that are in some need of, taken down or trimming, and we get calls all the time for trees. Stormwater and drainage. Our goal is to maintain at least 25% of the catch basins and to maintain they call them BMP's, best management practice for stormwater. Sidewalks, there was a report done a couple years ago to have a sidewalk repair program, and that calls for repairing about 1.5 miles of sidewalks per year. And so that's our goal. The pavement management program, we have over 87 miles of roadways, and our goal is to repair about 3.5 miles, probably more than that each year. General highways kind of encompasses a lot of stuff. Our goal is to make sure we get competitive prices for services, material, engineering, and try to work as efficiently as possible. And snow removal, our goal there is always to keep the roads safe as efficiently as we can. That number depends on the weather, so that's a tough one. Traffic signs and devices, our goal is to maintain the signs we have and repaint 30 miles of lines this year. And vehicle maintenance, our goal is to keep our vehicles in good shape. We have over 32 pieces of equipment with the DPW. We also repair the police and fire vehicles. The cemetery, the goal there is just to do prompt burials, maintain a neat appearance at the cemeteries, and provide excellent customer service. Next slide. So this kind of breaks it down by line item. So this is general highways, the major category. Within that, we have the hired equipment, drainage, purchase service, engineering, and on and on and on. So again, like I said, I took the average of the actual spending in FY21 and FY22, and then I used the budgeted number from FY23, got that average, came up with my proposed budget number. And some went up, some went down. I rounded them to whole numbers. Some of the previous budgets, there's none in this line, but well, like garage supplies, it's 1,040. To me, that looks like you're almost pigeonholing, like you're gonna wanna buy something specific when you have a number like that. So I just rounded them to whole numbers where I could. Let's see. I guess some of the bigger changes was engineering. There was 35,000 in the budget last year. We didn't quite use all that. We're not gonna come close to that, so I reduced that one down to 10,000, so I could use that money elsewhere on stuff that I know I'm gonna use. What's another one? Pavement management, our policies that it goes up 50,000 each year. I have another slide on that. We could talk about that further. The Lake Shirley Dam, the landfill monitoring cost, those were, they were under DPW last year, but they kind of fell under the facility side of DPW, so we brought them over. So I didn't have expenditures, although I could have got those numbers, but there's been pretty steady at 10,000 and 7,500. Streetlights, paying for the electrical charges, that's a new line item this year that we've added. The town just recently purchased the streetlights. I guess I'll move on to the next slide.
What's done with the Lake Shirley Dam?
Oh, Lake Shirley Dam, what we do there is we hire a consultant to inspect it, and we have to, every year, check the emergency action plan, make sure all the phone numbers, the contact people are all the same. So there's a consultant that helps us with that.
So it's $10,000 to inspect it and check out the contacts?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
What about the landfill monitoring cost? What exactly are we monitoring there?
They're monitoring for gas and, let me think, I'm trying to remember what it was. They take samples of the soil and the water samples, just monitoring wells,
Okay.
make sure we're not causing any pollution there.
And for the streetlights, is that 30,000 going to cover just the electricity? Nothing for repairs or anything like that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Right, repairs would come out of the purchase of service line item.
Okay.
All right, and like I said, I threw in a pie chart for each of the major categories, just so you can see where the money's going. And obviously, on general highway, most of the money goes to the pavement management. So, on the next slide, I talk about pavement management a little bit. So, pavement management is the process of planning and the maintenance and repair of a network of roadways to optimize pavement conditions over the entire network. It incorporates the life cycle cost into a more systematic approach to road repairs, and the needs of the entire network, as well as budget projections, are considered before projects are executed. So the town's been very good about this. They developed a pavement management plan in 2009, and then it was updated again in 2015. And that plan is ending this year, FY '23. And that included the $4 million voter authorized debt exclusion, which that money has been expended. So the goal of that plan was to get an overall road surface rating of 72 to 75 out of 100. And we've initiated our new plan. We hired a consultant. They went out, scanned our roads, and they came back, told us our road surface rating was 84.75, so well above our goal. And I think most people can attest our roads are in pretty good shape, and that's the way we want to keep them. So on the next slide,
Is that going to change? So I know our management plan ends this year, so we're going to be redoing that one. But at this point, is that number going to then affect the plan to pave 3.5 miles of road, since we're already above the score that we are targeting?
yes, yeah, right, so you won't see as much, mill and pave or just paving overlays. You'll see more maintenance type of repairs. I'm looking at doing fog seals. They spray, and they're calling it a rejuvenator over it. There's a couple different kinds. So the one I'm looking at is, it goes down almost clear, but it softens up the asphalt, because what happens is over time, the sun beats down on the asphalt, it dries it out, and then that's when you start getting cracks. So the fog seal will protect it from that and extend the life, they say 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so
So-
that'll get, so a $50,000 increase on that line should still cover. I don't think 50,000 would, being, cost what they are these days, to pave 3.5 miles for $50,000 is
No,
gonna be pretty
that's
tough.
not
Or,
gonna happen.
or, what is it, $550,000
Right.
even? Okay. Just
So-
for curiosity's sake, that number you had before for 87.5 miles, a couple sides back, is that our total roadway surface in town?
What was it, 87?
87.56 miles, is that,
More or less, that's what it is, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
it's a decent number.
Of town roads, not the
Town,
private roads.
not 2A or anything like that?
Right,
Okay,
and not the state road.
right, okay, thank you.
All right, so you go to the next slide, it's still on pavement management, it kind of shows what our backlog is. So It shows, my major rehab, which would be a reclamation type project. We rip up all the asphalt and repave it. Minor rehab's more of a mill and pave. And the preventative maintenance, there's other types of surface treatments you can do that are less expensive. And routine maintenance would be like the fog seal I was just talking about. So you could see in the square yard column, the major rehabs is only 31,000, but our routine maintenance is almost 400,000, which shows we're in good shape. But you could see the 31,000 square yards that require major rehab cost $1.5 million, where the 400,000 square yards of routine maintenance is only going to be about 300,000. So we want to stay in that routine maintenance range as long as we can. So on the next slide, talked about pavement management a little more, showing how it's going to grow by 50,000 each year until FY '27, which would be the end of our new pavement management plan, would be at $700,000. So we asked the consultant to put a capital improvement plan together for us. So they did, and the plan now, it's all on the computer. There's a nice website they can go to, and they can run models. So they ran the model based on this capital improvement plan and spending what I'm showing here, 500,000 in FY '23 up to 700,000 in FY '27. And the model says our road surface rating only drops by 4 points in those 5 years. But if we wanted to, which we probably will, we'll be a little more aggressive. We can use the Chapter 90 funding and do some more work, keep our roads in better shape.
So does that mean we should change our goal from 75 to something else, or?
We could. If we want to stay really aggressive, we could bring our goal up. 75 is still in really good shape. I like using this line. The consultant, when he gave us our score, he said that's the highest score he's seen in New England in the 12 years he's been doing it. So I don't think most communities are even that close.
And at the end of that, does that mean that by doing this plan, we wouldn't get any in that major rehabilitation state? Can you perpetually stay out of major rehabilitation, or is that almost unachievable?
Yeah, eventually you're gonna get there, but it'll be slower. And yeah, it won't be as many roads at once by maintaining it the way we plan to do.
And then have you seen a change on the material costs, like
Yeah,
for
definitely.
asphalt, and has that been leveling off, going down, going up?
No, like most things in the economy, it's been going up, right? A lot of it's based on diesel costs and heating costs, which they use, petroleum products, so.
Okay.
How substantial, if we're currently at an 84 3/4 score, dropping by 4 points, understanding the sort of the relative difference of that one, I see, 75, and I think that's probably not that great, but if we're one of the better ones in the state at 84, I'm curious as to what our surrounding towns would be, just for comparative sake, to see if we're dropping down towards 80, are we going to start seeing the effect of that, then we might need to reassess another potential debt exclusion from 2027 or something?
I don't see that happening, no.
Okay.
80 is still an excellent score.
Okay.
It would still be in good shape. There's always going to be a road that needs attention, but it won't be like some of our neighboring communities.
So you think the maintenance plan at this point is sufficient with this $50,000 a year increase to keep us at least relatively good with where we're at.
I believe it is, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So this year we used pavement management plan to cover some of the snow and ice overruns. Are you gonna get
Yes.
into like, what?
We haven't done that yet.
We haven't?
No, towards the end of the year, we'll balance out. But that's the source of funds that we expect to use.
But you have no plans to utilize the budgeted amount of pavement management for this year, right?
Right, a lot of it's going to be taken by the snow and ice cost. But we do have 1.3 million in Chapter 90 funds, and we would expect to get just over 400,000 in Chapter 90 funds for fiscal '24. So we can use those funds and complete our plan as presented.
Okay, so, I mean, it seems like every year we overrun snow and ice, and I understand the reasons behind that. What's the general thought on the plan to cover those overages year after year? Is it to just dip into pavement management now every year, or is that a one-time?
I think that this year is a one-time, right? It usually comes out of free cash at the end of the season.
Okay.
All right, we can move to the next slide with the highway labor. So highway labor, most of these are based on the collective bargaining agreements for the supervisors and clerical and laborers. And that these are all calculated, except for the highway overtime, which, again, I took an average, I bumped it up just a little bit higher than the average, because, all the guys' cost went up, and I didn't go up that much. The average was 10,357, I went to 12,000, so not a big jump. We'll go to the next slide, which, again, the pie chart kind of showing where all the money is spent, and it's mostly on the highway labor salaries, because that's where we have the most people. I guess one thing I could talk about was the highway labor salaries. Like I said, we're short one person. So I put that person in kind of a mid-range step 4 for my calculation. The people that we've been getting would fall into there or a little bit lower, the people that have been coming for interviews, so I think it's a good spot. We go to the snow removal. Again, looked at the averages, and I level funded everything on this one, but I did add the purchase of service, which has been used in the past. Wasn't in the FY23 budget, not sure why. So I put that number back in.
What would that be for?
That might be if we have to hire somebody, say, to, I don't know, help us shovel or something of that nature. I'm trying to think what else do we use it for. It's kind of a catch-all. It doesn't fit into the other categories. Of course, the two big items there are the snow supplies, which is basically the salt. The cost of salt has been rising a lot. It went up, I think it was 18% this year. I'd expect it to go up again next year. Just maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it was about half of what it is now. And The other big expense is contracted services, which is the trucks we hire to plow and sand our, salt our roads. So on the next slide, there's a graph showing the actual spending from fiscal 2000 up to the latest number today, fiscal '23. You can see this year was a big jump. Like I said, the price of salt went up, the cost of using vendors went up. We had to use more vendors this year because we had a couple of trucks broken down. And it's funny, some people would say, hey, we didn't get much snow, but the snow we did get was over long periods of time. It was cold temperatures, and many times there wasn't enough time, enough snow to really plow, so we had to put salt on it. So we used a little more salt than we would have liked. All contributed to the higher spending this year. And I threw in one more slide that kind of shows a trend line, shows the trend of prices going up over the years. And like everything in the economy, it's just going to continue to grow.
Do you by any chance know what the slope of that line is roughly?
I do not.
Okay, just curious on the year-by-year growth rate.
Yeah. I'll get you that number.
It looks like it's a little over, what, about 350 to just under 500 over a decade.
Yeah.
It's called $100,000 every decade or so, 150,000 every decade. Okay.
All right, the next slide is on traffic signs and devices. No big changes on that. Again, took the averages. That kind of stayed the same. And the pie chart shows line painting is a big part of it, and supplies, which is basically signs and signposts.
You know why there was a big jump in line painting from 2022 to 2023?
Why was there a big jump from?
Yeah, they went from 6,300 up to 17,500.
That was, well, our goal was to paint more roads in 2023. We have a lot of faded lines out there, so we want to get going on painting those.
Is it possible those are just COVID numbers, 21 and 22? Because we were up at 15,000 in 2020. Although line
Yeah.
painting for COVID, I don't know.
Or those years, maybe they had other priorities in mind, didn't spend as much there. Yeah. All right, the next slide is vehicle maintenance. There's this one I bumped up. It's a couple of them. Overall, there's a decrease. The police and fire, we were level funding for the most part, except for the fire fuel cost. They have all diesel trucks, and I know the ambulances are used an awful lot more than in the past, so the fuel costs have been going up there, so we bumped that one up. What was the other big changes? I brought down some of the DPW, the purchase service and supplies. The average was a little bit lower, so I brought those down a little bit. And again, I brought up the DPW fuel charges, again, because not much from FY '23, but again, we have diesel vehicles too, and the costs are just rising there. And the next slide, I had the pie chart, kind of showing where the spending is in a graphic form, and you can see the fuel is kind of the biggest expense. the next slide is our cemetery department. The salaries, again, those are by the CBA agreement, so those are calculated. The overtime for the cemetery supervisor, again, I took an average, I bumped it up just a little bit. What else happened here? Oh, purchase of service. So that one was a big jump. So purchase of service was new in 2021. They kind of took a guess on where that should be, and the budget was a little bit, the guess wasn't where it should have been. But what was the other one? Oh, the supplies. We had purchase of service and supplies. The supplies kept coming in lower. We were taking money from supplies, putting it into purchase of service. That's where more of the spending was. And then we know we have a one-time need for trimming the shrubs at the North Cemetery. We have a cost estimate to finish up what we've already started. It was $10,000, so that bumped up that line item by $10,000. Let's see. And the next slide, again, is the pie chart. And again, the biggest expense there is salaries again. And the next one is tree removal. That one stayed pretty steady. I bumped it up just a little bit. The purchase of service, I bumped up because, like I said previous, we get a lot of calls for trees, and the report that we have showed a lot of need for tree work, so. And again, the pie chart shows that's where the bulk of the spending is for tree removal.
I have a question on tree removal. I mean, is some of it Unitil for electric wires? How do you determine who does the removal?
Any branch that's over a Unitil wire, Unitil removes. Right? We don't want to go near the wire. And they've worked with us pretty well. If I call them, if it's an emergency, they're right out. If it's something they can wait, it's usually within a couple weeks. So we have a good relationship there.
And then if the whole tree needs to be removed they remove the ones near the wire, then you go and remove the entire tree after they do that?
Nope, they take the whole tree.
Oh, the whole tree?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, they've been good to us. Yep.
Has there been any tree survey done as far as clearing the roads?
We do have a report, yeah, it's road by road and tree by tree, yep.
So is that something that we work on year by year to continue to trim?
Not really, because we're more reactive. There's so many calls to, take down limbs and trees, and it just eats the whole budget before we can even think about, going to that plan and, doing some kind of routine work.
Yeah, because a lot of the tree canopies are covering the roadway.
Yes. Mhm. Oops. The next slide, talk a little bit about outside funding. So like I said earlier, the Chapter 90, we're anticipating $418,000 to come, and we currently have $1.3 million available. So we're in good shape there. I want to apply for a grant from the Massachusetts Community Compact Cabinet Best Practice Program grant. The goal there is to develop a bridge and culvert maintenance plan. We have a number of bridges in town, a couple new ones, but most of them are pretty old and need some attention. So we want to see what our needs are and see what our costs are going to be for future capital improvement type projects. And I tried this year to get a grant for safety training Didn't make the cut, but they said try again, so I'll try again for that.
Are there any anticipated Chapter 90 projects? I know in the past we've used that for non-road type. Any in your thoughts?
The only thing I have in mind now is the paving, some of the
Just
paving.
paving.
Yeah.
Okay, and then on the bridge culvert, it says bridge culvert preventative maintenance plan, but does that include projections of when we would have to replace, not just do preventative maintenance?
Yeah, that's the goal of that plan, yes.
Okay. And 32,000, would that be enough to be a comprehensive plan, in your opinion?
Yes, I actually have a cost estimate from an engineer on that.
Okay, so for all the bridge and culverts that we know about in town, that would cover that?
That we own, yes.
Okay.
For Chapter 90, I'm unfamiliar with how it works in terms of the money that's in there. Does it have a deadline for when it has to be spent, or is it just you are, once the money's given over, you have until perpetuity to spend it?
Right, and that one, yeah, we can spend it when we want. We can accumulate it, spend it when we have to, when we can. Unlike some other grants,
Right.
we have the RAP grant from MassDOT now, and we have to spend by June 30th, so.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
And the last slide is just talking about funding levels. I'm sure you realize the funding levels, if we keep it the same as last year, that will result in a reduction of service, because costs are going up, personnel costs are going up, and all the outsourcing costs go up. But I believe this budget that I presented, we'd be able to sustain the current levels of service that we provide now. And just the last comment I have is the proposed budget is the same dollar total as the preliminary budget proposed by the town manager. So, any further questions?
Oftentimes, we see a capital plan slide on this, and I know capital's kind of up in the air for this year, but where do you see yourself on the needs, wants this year, next 5 years?
So, I did put together a capital plan, and a lot of it was equipment. So, and I put that out like 8 years, I believe I did. I can get that over to you if you like. The other thing, there was a couple of projects that were kind of in the works. It's a culvert replacement project on Northfield Road, and what was the other one? There was two culvert programs kind of in the works before I got here, so I just continued those in the capital plan.
Okay, did you initially have things that were above the line for this year? You did? Do you remember what they were?
That were part of the preliminary budget. Yes, the two dump trucks, now they're being funded through ARPA.
Yep.
And that's where the line.
Okay, so everything else was preliminary, everything else was in the future? So nothing major that,
Below the line.
yeah.
Let's see. Another pickup truck, 55,000. Cemetery headstone restoration, 38. Northfield culvert design for 25. Turf restoration for cemetery. And that was all. Yep. All of it's up on the website as well, on the capital plan.
Yep, okay.
Bill's presentations in there for both infrastructure and equipment.
Okay, thank you. And then the final one was just, I know last year there was the Flat Hill project that then became the Flat Hill plan for the stormwater runoff. When does that, do you have any anticipation on when that shows up in either a capital request or some remediation for that issue?
That's the drainage one.
Right, so I did put in a capital request for that. It wasn't too well received for the construction end of it because we don't have construction plans yet, so they didn't want to fund something that wasn't there. But it's definitely on the radar.
Okay. And there was a capital project last year to do the study on that. Is that nearing completion?
Yeah, so we're still in the process on that one. We've met with the homeowners association where some of the water's coming from, and there's going to be an update soon here at the select board's meeting on the status of that.
Trying to figure out a date that works for everybody. Everyone has hard schedules to coordinate the same date.
Okay, but do you think that update will be the result of the study that was a capital project last year, or is it just an in-process kind of?
Just an update as far as where we're at. What next steps.
I mean, this thing's been going on for decades, and I don't sense any urgency to see it to an actual plan that we can implement. Am I misstating that, or am I just not seeing something going on?
No, we are definitely working on it. Yeah, I understand your frustration. You get water. A lot of the neighbors get water there. I can see the frustration. What we looked at, there's no simple answer short of throwing tons of money at it, And we just don't want to throw tons of money at it. We want to do something that's efficient and effective.
Was there engineering work done for that? Did an engineer go out and look at that?
Yes. Right, so that's what the update's going to be, is his findings, where we're at.
So we don't have that yet?
We did a preliminary study, basically, a hydraulic study. Yes, we have that report from him, which has been shared with the residents as well as the village athletic.
Do you know which meeting you're planning to present that to the select board?
That's what I said, we've been trying to finalize a date, but everyone's.
Oh, that's the one that you're
schedules
trying,
are-
oh, it's not the residents, it's the actual select board.
It's everybody we've invited
Okay.
to that.
To discuss the engineering plan?
To discuss the results of McCarty Engineering's recommendations.
Did you know that?
I did. Well, I asked for it on Tuesday to have the update. I do not have any interim results on that.
Yeah, the last I knew, there was an engineer who went out and looked at it. I don't remember seeing any results from it.
Okay. I don't think I have any other.
Questions? Have we had a chance to order the DPW trucks yet? Do we have an expected delivery date, or at least an anticipated delivery year for those?
Right, so I had capital funds from FY '22, and for a six-wheel dump truck and a 10-wheel dump truck, so those have been ordered. I was initially told 1 year to get those trucks, so that should have been, to us by, say, December of this year. But recently, they just told me that it's not going to happen. The production dates that have been pushed out at least another 3 months, so I won't see the trucks until this time next year, so after the winter. But the ARPA funds, we can spend those now. I kind of have a lead on a medium-sized truck, and that seems to be on the lot, so I'm heading out to a dealership next week to confirm that, and hopefully we can get those ordered and have them ready for next winter.
Excellent.
What were the price on those again?
The six-wheeler was just over 200,000, and the 10-wheeler was just over 250,000.
I think they were both 250 on the capital request, somewhere around there.
Yes.
240.
And the useful life on those is, what's the anticipated useful life?
We want to get at least 10 years out of them. The federal government recommends, I think it's 7 years, and the DPW Association nationwide is like 7 to 10 years. So we definitely want to get 10 or more out of them, which I'm sure we can do.
I think that's it. Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the information.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, would you mind grabbing a microphone? I'm getting a message in chat that people can't hear you. Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on to facilities.
I'm just joining Chris because Chris hasn't been here very long, so any history that when he wasn't here, I can fill in, answer those questions.
Only been in here about a month, so.
All right. Whenever you are ready, I have the slides up as well, so same as DPW, if you'd like, I can flip through them for you.
All right, so we'll get started here. The first slide is just the cover page. We can jump to the agenda. Just want to run through quickly what we're going to be looking at. We'll have Facilities Department overview. As Bill mentioned, it's been split from DPW. Quick meet our team. Some budget breakdown items. So work order metrics, and then some project updates. So we jump to the next slide here. So as part of the FY23 budget, the Facilities, Grounds, and Parks was removed from the umbrella of the Department of Public Works. A new department was created. It's headed by myself in the director position. It also includes a facilities superintendent, facilities custodian, and a part-time rec director, which we just hired, who will be starting at the end of the month. There's also seasonal beach director and lifeguards. All of these facilities and grounds require regular maintenance, and there's a multitude of large capital projects that need to be managed on a regular basis. To the next slide there. The Facilities Department is responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of the 11 town buildings. I'm not going to list them off unless you guys need all that. All the grounds, parks, the baseball fields, all that, everything, with the exception of the school fields. The TC Passios building and the Brooks building are occupied by the school, and for the most part, they take care of their stuff with their staff. There are some things that we get involved in, more of the major repairs. but all these facilities require quite a bit of regular maintenance. As you can see, we're sitting in a 200-year-old building here. Jump to the next slide. This is our team here. I hate taking pictures, so you got a picture from my wedding in there. And we have Kit Walker, who's our facilities superintendent, and Don Gagne, who's our facilities custodian, and Angela Clement, who is the newly hired rec director. Jump down. There's some budget breakdowns if you want to jump one more here. So this was our fiscal year 23 budget. Just kind of giving you a breakdown of where the bulk of the costs are. As you can see, facility salaries takes up about a quarter of it. Contracted service and repairs is, subcontractors doing repairs for us, regular maintenance programs, all that type of stuff falls under that umbrella. The other large ones on there are, electricity charges, cleaning services for the town. If you want to jump to the next slide here.
Is there a reason that that landfill monitoring and Lake Shirley Dam is on this one as well?
Because they were still within the FY 23 budget. 24, they get moved out.
Got it.
So if we jump down to 24, the percentages change a little bit because those items move back to DPW. Also a small increase in contracted services for 24. Our next slide is the parks budget. The bulk of our parks budget really is the purchase of services, which is similar to our contracted services and facilities. The salary of the rec director and the beach staff is a pretty good chunk, but most of the maintenance is coming out of facility staff. So you don't have as much labor hitting there.
So if I may, just at this point, one of the things we've typically asked, and I know you're new to the role and coming up to speed quickly, but is that this budget is presented to parks before coming to us.
Okay.
So what I would ask, knowing that that didn't happen this year, can we make sure that this does get presented to the parks at one of their meetings to make sure that they're aligned with everything you have?
Yeah, of course.
If I can interject there too, before Chris came on board and when I was developing the budget, I did communicate with the chair, which I'd had regular meetings with, to see what their needs were. So the budget reflects that.
Okay.
Our next slide is just showing where we currently are with the FY23 budget and how much we spent. Most of the line items are kind of at halfway. There's a few things that are above, a few that are below. Just kind of a recap of where we are overall at the moment. Should have enough to get us through the end of this fiscal year. The next slide here is,
Can I ask a question? Maybe this, I don't know if this is the best time, or maybe I should have in the last presentation, but just on landfill monitoring and this issue that seems to have just come up on Burridge Street. Do we have an idea of like all the sites that had environmental protection actions associated with them across the town? And if so, what, do we do monitoring of them as part of that?
The town does not do monitoring of those sites. Those are usually under DEP consent order. So they have a consent order that they are obligated to the landowner with DEP. So we do get copies of letters associated with those properties. And I would think all those sites would be on DEP's database.
Okay, so having worked with the state in other capacities, sometimes they have requirements, but they don't actually follow through on monitoring them. Do you know if in this case they do actively monitor all the sites that have reporting requirements associated with them?
I would
Because in the end, it is our town.
I would have to look into that. It's not the town's role in that. It's the state who does, they notify the town regarding those requirements.
It seems as though it would be nice to know, because there could be costs even associated with some of these issues if they're not properly reported on and actions taken, and, you know, that we're taking in those reports, reviewing them, and making sure that there's no kind of issues that are popping up. You said they do report to the town on all of them?
We do get letters on those properties, yeah, occasionally, because they contract with, say they have a company that's doing those monitoring requirements, we get letters.
And then when you get the letters, what do you do with them?
They're just for our records. There's no action on our part required.
Do we have, if it's all run through the DEP, how are we knowing exactly sort of where everything is, if, other than what they've already found? I mean, is there other, I assume, going off the Bird Street issue, was that currently included in what the DEP was testing?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
Yep, that's been under consent since I think the 1980s.
Okay. Do we have an idea as to how many sites in town we have that?
I don't know that number.
Okay. Okay.
So if you guys are good, we'll jump to, I think it was 2 slides down for the target requests. Alright, so for 24, we've requested an additional $15,000 in the facilities contracted services due to some additional smaller projects that fall under the $20,000 threshold for capital. There's a new line item in the Parks Recreation budget for salaries related to programming for $5,000, and an increase of $8,500 in the contracted services for Parks and Recreation. I'll jump down to the next slide. It'll show the changes year to year. For the most part, everything's staying the same aside from the additional $15,000 in the contracted services line. And you can see that the Lake Shirley Dam and the landfill monitoring were removed from our 24 budget because they went over to Bill's. The next slide here is just a similar summary showing the same thing for the parks changes. The additional $5,000 for the salaries for programming and the additional $8,500 for the purchases of service. Everything else has stayed the same across the last couple of years.
So, sorry, on the prior slide, the contracted services, it's $250,000. Like, it's kind of a vague term that's used a lot, but what exactly is in that?
It is kind of a catch-all.
Yeah.
It's, you know, the regular maintenance and monitoring, so we have fire alarm, it's burglar alarm monitoring for all the buildings, and then it really just ends up being all the contracted services. So Kit and Dawn are fantastic at taking care of most of the small things, but when you need a plumber or you need an HVAC or anything like that, we're calling in subs, and where anyone that's working in the town is prevailing wage, the bills are quite a bit more than what you'd expect if it was your own house.
But is that landscaping? Is that?
Yes.
That's probably a pretty significant portion of that.
Landscaping, I think is separate.
Is landscaping separate at all?
Let me see.
I thought it all fell into.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think landscaping's all under that as well.
I'm sorry.
But yes, landscaping is in there as well.
Landscaping is, okay.
So we jump down to the next slide. It was just a quick summary saying that the money moved back and forth from DPW to facilities. popped up on one screen there. Then the next thing we have here, if you want to jump down to our work order metrics, just to kind of show you where our guys are most of the time here. One more, please. Yeah, the pie charts there. So the graph on the left here is showing our service calls by building for the fiscal year '23. As you can see, the biggest chunks of that pie there are the buildings that have the most use. Senior center, library, town hall are pretty big. Public safety's got quite a bit going on over there. The graph to the right is overall work orders that we received since we've had the e-maintenance program with the town. I believe there were a couple listed there from '21, and that's calendar year, not fiscal. Town hall had quite a bit then, but it still stays pretty much the same where most of the calls are. Jump down the slide here, we'll give you a couple updates of projects here in town. The first one bring attention to is the primary school demolition. Actually, the contract was sent out this morning for the demolition of this building. It includes, knocking the building down, removing all the hazardous materials, and just leaving it as grass for what will hopefully be a future park. We came in quite a bit under our initial estimate for this one, which is good. I'm guessing there's going to be something they'll find buried out there, but as of right now, we're saving some money on that one.
No, hopefully not buried.
You said something, right? Not someone.
It's an old building, you never know what you're going to run into buried in the building, in the walls, anything out there.
If memory serves me, you'll find a lot of mice, a lot of dead mice.
What, on the contract itself, what is the final, I know there was discussion at town meeting as to whether we're gonna have a hole left behind or how it was going to be left by.
So they're gonna backfill the foundation hole. The site is sloped a little bit, so it'll remain sloped, and then seed it and just have grass for now.
Okay.
The next one is for the Ritter Building. Exterior improvements for a new ADA ramp. Hopefully replacing the windows as well. Historic has some thoughts on that, but we just hired an architect to finish the drawings and update. The previous one has retired, so hopefully we'll have some more updates in that building coming soon. Next one is the town beach house repairs. If you're unfamiliar, the front wall that faces the road there wasn't really attached to the building. So that's been taken down and rebuilt, so it's all structurally sound now. We have a couple more minor repairs to get ready for the season, but it's looking quite a bit better now.
You think it will be ready for the beach season?
Yep. Yeah, we have to do a little bit of trim work and a coat of paint, so.
Has it passed all inspections at this point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Next one to touch base on is the Marshall Park plan. Our survey work has been completed, and actually the Parks Chair and myself are meeting tomorrow morning with the civil engineer and landscape architect to review next steps as far as taking it from a conceptual plan into schematic phase and really hammering out some details.
Any surprises on the survey? Is everything generally where we thought it was?
I didn't see anything that jumped out at me as a crazy surprise.
Okay.
As we get into the schematic, the only thing we may run into is there are some underground structures out there that may throw a curveball at us, but as of right now, we're okay. The next project was Town Hall exterior renovations. This went out to bid. We had
Excuse me.
a whole bunch of contractors that said they were looking at it. We ended up only receiving that one bid, and it was way over what we were thinking, so we're going to look at what our options are to try and get some more contractors interested to see if the price will come down or if we have to adjust our plan of attack there.
Do you have the option to go back to them and renegotiate, or is it, once they send their quote, that's it?
it's high enough to the point where renegotiating isn't gonna help.
I'm curious as to how they got to that number, because it is egregiously high.
Yeah, I would agree. I have not had time to review it with them yet.
Okay.
It just came in last week, and truth be told, I've been in training all week this week, so. The next project was kind of a surprise for us, but I just wanted to put it on there. Powell Field, someone managed to get out there with a truck and do a whole bunch of damage. I reached out to the Powell family, who actually, about 3 or 4 days after I talked to them, sent some guys and machines out there and repaired it for free. As opposed to, we had some other quotes from some other contractors and people willing to donate time and materials, but, since their name's on the sign, they wanted to take care of it. So as soon as the snow melts, we just have to get some seed on it. Hopefully it'll be ready for the start of the season.
Do we have any sort of a plan to block off an entrance that could have been used?
So the entrances they got through were just unlocked. They
Okay.
have since been locked, and we have the guys checking on them periodically, and one of my goals is taking care of all the facilities here is kind of wrangling all the keys and locks in town, is 'cause nobody really knows who's got keys for what and what they go to, so it's one of my long-term goals is to get that under control. Next slide here is just kind of an update on some open capital projects that hopefully we can get caught up on now. We've got the senior center kitchen, which was replacing cabinets. We had carried 22,000 because the plan was to have Monty Tech do all the work. They actually just finished up the Ritter break room doing the same thing. They did a great job, but they are booked up for the rest of the school year. So that one may not happen until next year. Public safety carport reconfiguration, that was initially bid, and the numbers came in quite a bit higher, but that was it last year or 2 years ago when prices were
2
insane?
years, yeah, during COVID, or the pandemic.
So we're gonna put that one back out to bid, and hopefully, now that some of the materials prices have stabilized, it'll come back down to a reasonable price. We have the carpeting in the public safety building that needs to be replaced. When the building was built, they used a broadloom carpet, so, one sheet of carpet for the room. We're pricing out going to carpet tiles, so once there's damage, you can swap out a tile and you're good. A couple other ones, just not take the time here, is there's some drainage engineering that needs to be done at the public safety, some HVAC upgrades for the senior center. The senior center and Brooks House both have some items from the Vertex reports that need to be addressed. The senior center generator will hopefully get done sooner than later, especially after we had the power outage this year. People are starting to realize it's nice to have somewhere to go when the power's out. And designs for the ADA patio at the senior center are almost complete. We can continue to move forward with that.
Speaking of, do we have plans in place for, aside from the senior center, getting a generator for any sort of a long-term power outage in town, for anywhere to go for people? Or are we still sending people off to Fitchburg and Leominster at this point?
As far as I know, the only plan to add a generator right now is for the senior center. Public safety has a generator, I believe. DPW has one as well.
But they don't have the,
But they're really not
capacity.
places where we're gonna send people.
Okay. So we don't have anything planned or anything,
Not at the moment.
okay.
Besides the senior center, and that was the reasoning behind.
Right, at least at the start, but
Mhm.
I don't think it would be able to hold a decent chunk of the town, unfortunately, or,
No, it was also to help separate populations.
okay.
Jumping forward here, I guess let's get the title on the goals for the facilities department. Number one goal is to create and implement a comprehensive building maintenance program. It's really just getting everything in line and getting the scheduled maintenance regularly done so we can avoid larger repairs and prolong the life of all of our buildings. I guess number two is kind of part of that, but we're looking to better utilize our building management software. We have a couple of buildings that we can remotely see what's going on, but we need to improve on that, as well as utilizing our e-maintenance system for more than just service calls. Number 3, I guess, it relates to our last slide of catching up on the capital projects that have already been funded. And number 4 is just looking to the future to prepare for the future needs of the town facilities, grounds, and parks. I guess I'll open it up if you have any other questions.
Thank you. Open up to the committee. Any questions down the road?
I don't have any additional. Thank you for your presentation.
Question on the Brooks House. I know there's a committee I'm on that's looking at the future of a lot of these houses, and the Brooks House is one of them. I know it was approved. What kind of work is that to be done?
Foundation work.
Was it foundational, I think it was?
I think it was the foundation, and I want to say, was the fire escape included in that one?
No, not in the fiscal 23 plan.
It was just the foundation
Yeah.
repairs?
Regarding contracted services, you said that's hiring out subcontractors. Where do you see we're at? That number is like 250,000, I think?
240 is what we're.
240. Would the town benefit from having a full-time professional plumber or electrician versus doing contracted services? Where are we at with that type of work?
We do get quite a bit of plumbing calls. The contractors we have been good to work with, but if we had someone on staff, it would probably be cheaper for most things. You know, Kit and Don they're very good at what they do, but limited skills, and a lot of these items you need license for. You know, there's a plumbing license, there's a gas fitter's license, there's a sprinkler license, so it'd be great to find somebody with all of them that could kind of handle those. It'd certainly be helpful. Something we can look into for sure.
Yeah, we're paying the prevailing wage versus having in-house.
Yeah, and
Curious to see what, those numbers might be.
the only other way we can get around that for some projects are if it's an owner-operator, one-man show type of thing, they don't have to pay themselves prevailing wage. So you can save a little bit there, but if they bring a helper on site,
Yeah. That'd be hard to find.
I don't have any more questions. I asked mine already. So, again, thank you and welcome. Well
Thank
done
you.
for 4 weeks.
thanks for the help.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Do we have a town manager report?
I really report just updates on the budget from the preliminary budget, which I put in your SharePoint folder. I don't know if there's a way you can share that.
In the budget material folder?
Yes.
There it is.
It's adjustments to preliminary budget worksheet dated 3/9.
I think I have 3.3 or 3.2 open. Yep, I have 3.2 open. Oh, there it is. Got it.
So, no changes on the revenue side. There are a few changes on the expenditure side. So I'll start with, not review the ones we've already gone through previously. These are all, I date them for that reason. So money check, below that number, because we reviewed that number last week. The change in facilities sewer betterment amount, there's an update to that number of $5,492. That's based on the payment that's due in fiscal '24. There was an identified need to create a new line item within the facilities budget for departmental expense. And that would cover things such as office expense, mileage, training costs, those types of expenses. The change in the police department budget was due to an employee leaving, so an attrition factor, and that's to the ed incentive line of $10,250. That was reflected in the budget that you saw presented by the chief last week, so that number is that update. And the Lunenburg schools, this budget hasn't been voted on, but the draft budget the superintendent is presenting next week is a 2.5% increase, and the reduction from the preliminary budget is $133,346. So the new bottom line surplus is $315,116.19. The goal, moving forward, waiting for the warrant to close, I think it's important to see all the monetary impacts to the budget and potential articles that we'll need to fund. So, but there would be that as an available source now, free cash as a source of funding for those needs. And hopefully an increase in cherry sheet local aid number.
When does the warrant close again?
The 20th.
How many are we up to so far?
We're up to you.
On track. Excellent. Any other questions? All right. All right, old business. Our town meeting finance committee report. Again, this is just a placeholder so we can continue, so we can start working on this, because we will need to submit a document, or we should submit a document to be put into the town booklet for the warrant. And we are, I know we've gone over the date 1,000 times and I continuously forget, but we are coming closer to the date at this point. So I think what I'd like to do here is at least start bulletizing just our ideas for what we want to hit on, or at least brainstorming for ideas that we'd like to hit on. So we can start the process of at least putting together some sort of a document. So historically, we've kind of gone through and gave our idea as to where the town was financially. I think it's probably a good idea to continue with that.
Yep.
Actually, I can pull it up too and share it. That would probably be easier. Which folder was that in specifically? Remember?
I don't.
Or what's it called? I can just search for it.
Final warrant letter.
There we go. That's the one. All right, so just so we have it up on screen, it's gonna be pretty tough. Should catch up at some point. So yes, again, we talked about basically where the town is at, how it's been going for the past few years. And then we get down into where we're getting money from, our revenue side of things. I think we should address well, basically, I'd like to have a conversation on how we think this looked from previous years, how we think we'd like to look for this year. So starting off, I think one of the bigger ones, for sure, at least for me, is going to be to at least address the issue of ESSER funds sunsetting. I know it was brought up before. But I think at least acknowledging that we have these positions that have been provided for by ESSER funding are going to be sunsetting by, I believe, September of 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And then whether or not that's funded again through the state, or we want to continue funding it within town, how that's going to affect the budget for the school budget coming up. That would be my big one. Are there any other topics that anyone?
So just on that one, I won't be here next week for the school budget, so maybe ask that question so that we can kind of get some of that material, if you remember at least.
Yeah, let's hear.
We usually go through this paragraph on our certified free cash is whatever it is. Obviously, I think we're going to have to talk about whatever the final number is that we put towards the
abatements?
The overlay account.
Okay.
So I don't think we have ever typically talked about overlay accounts, but we will this year, obviously.
Where was this one from last year? Is that in one of the folders?
It is. This is located, actually, let's find out exactly where it is located. Does it really not tell you exactly what folder it's in? There we go. It is in Finance Committee Documents, Meeting Material, 2021. And then from the 2021-03-11 meeting. Did you find it in there? Should be titled 2022 FinCom Letter Draft.
Yep.
Although we probably have the final one later on, where we took out the X's, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm looking at last year's final, I think.
Okay. I will pull that one up so we have that one for next time as well. Okay, so ESSER funding, overlay accounts, and free cash certification, how that's going to potentially be different, substantially different this year. Chances are we're not going to have a number. I would assume, Madam Town Manager, we're probably not going to have a number by the time we at least need to submit this letter for where we're at with abatements and the certified free cash. That's going to be a tricky one.
So you don't get a chat message that no one can hear me.
You don't want Dave to message me again.
So abatements, no, as far as status, that number, I don't feel confident that we'd have, any kind of reduction or change in that number from the 1.5 million before town meeting.
Okay.
There's the whole question of, if any of those are peeled to the ATB, so that's going to be a more prolonged process, if that's the case. And so free cash, we will have, numbers by the time you write that, I believe, as far as what those recommendations are on to use the available free cash.
Okay.
Including the $1.5 million
Right.
for, okay.
Okay. If out of curiosity as well, if the abatements, some of them or some percentage of them end up getting denied and they go to appeal, I know that happens through the state. Are we going to be on the hook for anything for cost coverage for that process, for the appeal process?
For the town or
For the town, from the town side, right?
Well, we would probably utilize our town council.
But that's already built in.
We're on retainer with our
Okay.
council.
And if the appeals, I guess, is there a scenario where we end up having to incur more money through free cash to cover litigation costs or anything like that, potentially?
Like I said, with the number I gave was our worst case scenario.
That
I
includes
think
the
we'll
potential for that?
be good with that.
Okay.
number.
Excellent, okay, thank you. All right, other, go
I
ahead.
did find the letter from last year.
The final one?
Yeah.
Which
It's
will,
It's in meeting materials 2022, 414. So April 14th. It says final warrant letter.
got it. Thank you. Okay. Certified free cash. We went over chapter 70, we went over ESSER. Library was in there. Long-term staffing plan. The IT budget increase. Oh, we could do the debt ratio, that report that we had business manager put together for giving us an actual ceiling for what we could spend. The debt capacity ceiling, effectively. I believe it was 47 million or something to that effect, if I remember correctly. And that obviously talking about the individual warrants once we get those ones, or at least the rough drafts of them. That was pretty much it at that point. So again, any other topics anyone can think of that are separate and are important to put in, or at least consider?
I mean, so far, there's been nothing overly noteworthy,
No,
other than just summarizing maybe.
could go into ARPA funding as well, I suppose. Actually, we probably should include ARPA funding. What we currently have, what the select board's currently has spent.
Which would just be another update to one of these.
Exactly. Yeah, I see a lot of these just kind of being reworked.
Right.
I think probably to, something in there about the whole real estate tax and abatement and all that, and how we need to correct it, get to that this year so it doesn't affect next year. Because obviously that's putting a hold on our cash and our funds, and, you know, we don't, so we're kind of on hold for almost a year waiting for some big projects that we'd like to do. And I think the other thing would be is the issue with the state money, if we're in there, if we don't know what that's going to be like next year, it could be positive with the 4% millionaires tax, could bring money in, or it could be negative with a recession and the state comes back and cuts funds. So, but I think that's probably, I mean, other than the millionaire's tax, that's always the issue, how much we're gonna get. But
When would the millionaire's tax come into play next year?
It started January
it's this,
1st.
yeah, it's already in place, but they don't know how much the revenue's gonna be until they start collecting
15th
it.
of next year, yeah.
Yeah.
But it would affect next year's budget probably, right?
I think that's part of,
I think that's part of Governor Healy's budget, was taking into account those revenues
For this year?
for fiscal '24's
24.
budget.
Okay.
I'm a little hesitant to, I think we just have to be very careful about what we say about the tax issue.
Well,
I agree that it should be in there.
I think it's not that we're taking a position, but that we need to get it resolved
Right.
this year so that it doesn't affect next year. I think
Okay.
that's the point that we would want to make, at least as a committee.
Okay. That sounds much better. You know, the idea of taking a stance is
No,
tricky.
no,
That's- But resolving it is financially responsible. And
Yeah,
certainly resolving it sooner rather than later is financially
it also allows us the ability to plan better.
Mhm.
Because if we have the same problem next year, then we'll be in the same boat we are with we don't know. And that's not a good place to be.
Mhm. Excellent. Any other topics? All right. The capital plan, I assume nothing has changed, still the way that it is, likely not to change until next year?
No, I do expect to make some updates to the plan, given the new available, not new available, but now that we have a number for the abatement.
Okay, are you considering starting to drop below the line that you were at previously?
Yes.
Okay. And have you reorganized anything that was in there before?
The list is
The
the same as I
last list
presented
presented.
in January.
It's still the same? Okay. Do you have a rough idea as to how much you're looking to maintain in free cash? Or is that still to be decided?
Maintain as far as
Well, if we have, like, what is it, like 2.4 million in total?
2.8.
2.8, and then if we have the 1.5, that's 1.3 available.
Right. Right now, I'm thinking 500,000 addition to the capital plan.
Okay. Okay.
Do you anticipate the capital planning committee meeting again to review that, given the circumstances, or that you'd just?
I will certainly send them any updates for funding so that they're aware of what projects will be recommended to be funded.
All right. Moving on to tax assessments and abatements. Unless anybody's dying to have a conversation about it, I don't know if there's much of an update to provide. Other than I would just urge the public to do their best to at least remain, or try and get to the point of solving it as best as possible. I know people are starting to get really upset, and it's unfortunate that we're in this position, but we are in this position. And it's best to I think, work together as best as possible to try and get through it. So I urge civility, I wouldn't say patience, but I certainly urge civility out of the whole process. Anyone else? All right. Moving on to minutes. We have, I believe, one set of minutes in there for our last meeting on the 2nd. Has anyone had a chance to read through them?
I did.
Any issues with them?
No issues.
All right, happily entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes from the March 2nd meeting.
Your second?
Second.
All right, motion is made and seconded by Caesar and Tom. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are unanimous on our minutes. Perfect. Moving on to public comment. Is there any public comment from the committee?
Yeah, I have one. So I know there's some discussions going around about, public comment, stating your name, about things like, remaining anonymous on bringing forth issues. From my perspective, we represent the town, so, if people want to have their voice heard, and choose to do so kind of in an anonymous way, you always have the option to come to me and talk to me about it, if it's, finance related or anything related, I guess. I'd also say that, you can email one or all of us. Emails can be public record, so, you may just want to email us if you want to talk as well. But I think it's important for everyone to have a voice, even if they don't want it to be their own voice. So, I urge, if anyone has issues that they want to bring forward, they can, at least through me, come to me to bring them forward. So,
Thank you. Any public comment from the public? Mr. Passios has his hand up.
Yes, good evening, folks. Hope my voice holds up. I've had a pretty good flu for the last few days. First of all, to Chris's comments there a couple seconds ago about getting information or giving information anonymously, I think if the information comes through, as you said, Chris, an elected or appointed official of the town directly to that person from a citizen of the town, I think that's the appropriate way for information to pass. You're right, a lot of people do not want to stand up in public and make their comments, but they have concerns. And I've said that for years. I'm out in public all the time, and, very well known by sight, and I have discussions all the time as to what's going on or concerns that people have, and that brought them to the town in that manner. Second comment, the discussion briefly there about the generator for the senior center. I was your representative to the capital planning committee the year that was put on the plan. The supporting factors behind that was that after the experiences of the ice storm, it was very clear that the senior population needed its own separate shelter for many different reasons. And that was why there was strong support for that generator. And for it to be a full shelter, once the generator is in place, there's a few more improvements that will need to be done if they haven't already been done. Finally on that, I'm curious as to why we're not using Turkey Hill Elementary School as an emergency shelter, as that has been our formal shelter for years. And why are we shipping our people off to other towns? We haven't had a long extended outage or disaster since the ice storm. But we've had a number of people, especially this winter, that were without power for a number of days. And they were told to go to some other town when we have a facility here in Wilmington. Lastly, I'm going to put on my parks hat for a minute, and I'm speaking as an individual and vice chair of the Parks Commission. And I would like to clarify that there was no budget discussion in an open meeting with the entire commission. And I look forward to having a synopsis 31st of this month. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So just, Dave, on that last thing, I think Chris agreed to present to you in an upcoming meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Going backwards, because I missed two topics. Committee reports. I was excited to leave. Do we have any updates for committee reports?
I don't have one.
No.
Excellent. All right. Future meetings? Any topics for future meetings? I'll send a note off to the select, or the school committee and superintendent about the ESSER funding. Asked for that to be put into their presentation, but any other requests or topics for future meetings? We have a bunch coming up.
I mean, maybe Dave's question on Turkey Hill as a, would be one you could ask next week. I could ask it if I were here, but I won't be available.
All right, any others? All right, now moving on to upcoming meetings. Next week on the 16th, we have the fire department and the public schools. So that will be a good presentation for sure. On the 22nd, we have administration, unclassified, and debt service, as well as Monty Tech. On March 20th, that's a Wednesday, by the way, so that's our odd one out. On March 23rd, the next day, we have PAC, we have sewer, and we have other moneyed articles. And then we are through, and we are on to our public hearing on the 30th. With that, I would happily entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second. All right, motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it is 8:43 PM and we are adjourned.